All right, everybody. Stocks by the numbers, welcome back. And I'm coming to you later here after the close Friday afternoon. I was very curious to see how this stock was going to close because we've had apparently a lot of news hit the tape recently for this company. And I know a lot of you are involved or just keeping an eye on it, looking to take a position. So let's look at what's going on here. Name of the company, Super Micro Computer Incorporated, ticker symbol SMCI, listed here on the NASDAQ. Stock closed a touch below 420 a share, had a 17-point rebound today, up about 4.25%, seemingly pretty flat after hours right now. So what's going on is, first of all, I have to laugh at this whole situation because this has to be the most ass-backwards use of the DOJ, in my opinion. And I just laugh at the fact that you hear that for years, we'll find out about companies like Enron who were doing some BS nonsense behind the scenes. No one raised a flag, no one had an issue, no one thought something smelled funky, and then all of a sudden it all comes crashing down. It's all nonsense. Where was the SEC and all that stuff, right? Those are the arguments that people always make. Now, interestingly enough, as SMCI starts garnering more attention, they start rallying like an animal. Stock goes from 2 to 300 range, rallies up several hundred percentage points to above 1200, gets listed on the S&P 500, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure there's a couple of people who have to check the numbers and make sure that a stock qualifies for the S&P 500 and whatnot. Then they got approved, they got listed on the S&P 500, and basically from that point, it has been nothing but negativity. And in my opinion, I just have to laugh because regardless of how much you made off of other random stocks, whether it's Nvidia, whether it's something like an ASTS, I really just have to laugh because it's like we're holding no one under the microscope except SMCI. We heard years ago the Department of Defense lost track of trillions of dollars that they don't know what happened, where it went, who it went to. That gets swept under the rug. We don't need an investigation. Oh, it's just part of the defense company, the defense sector. It happens. Okay. You hear about Nancy Pelosi trading potentially off of inside information. Somehow, some random woman in Congress is outperforming Warren Buffett. The guy's got like 8 decades of market experience, but you're outperforming him strictly because you are blatantly trading, in my opinion, off of inside information. But hey, listen, let's push that to the side. That doesn't need to get investigated. Oh, SMCI absolutely exploded. And in my opinion, it seems like all of you, the younger kids, the younger investors and traders, you stepped in, you took positions in SMCI, you made out like a freaking bandit. The stock started exploding. You had people like myself who were looking for $2,000 plus price target on SMCI because we technically should be on the up and up. And then what happens? All of a sudden, the stock sucks. Is it overvalued? This company comes out of left field with their quote-unquote research report, basically going out on a limb saying, oh, hey, this company had issues in the past, so we're kind of assuming that we're going through the same issue now, and we don't know why everyone's excited, and, we're shorting the stock. All of a sudden, the stock starts to drop big. And as I mentioned, there were so many issues over decades with publicly traded stocks or people involved behind the scenes in the market doing some shady shit. And no one said anything. No one raised a flag. No one did an investigation. They still to this day cannot tell us who moved puts on Boeing and American Airlines, I believe it was, on the morning of September 11th, right as the planes hit. They still haven't released that information. It has been over 2 decades, and we still don't know who made those moves and made profits in excess of like $600 million or whatever the figure was. That information we don't have, right? But some schmuck out of left field who missed this run is now assuming that SMCI is doing something wrong. So they come out with this short selling report. And then all of a sudden now we got the DOJ launching an investigative probe into SMCI. So, I mean, you can't make this shit up. And that's why I just have to take a step back and I just have to laugh my ass off at this whole situation. So Obviously, if for some reason they're found guilty of some accounting discrepancies or whatever, then obviously the stock is going to pull back. I think I said last time we might see a low of like 275. And I kind of came to that conclusion because we gapped up here. And then you can see we had this sideways channel for several months before the stock started to break up and climb into like the 5 and the 600s. So if we go just kind of like the mid-range of this channel here, you can see that's kind of where I got my figure from, right? We're looking at like 260 to like 280 maybe, somewhere in that range. So that's why I said, worst case scenario, if they want to keep it down, we flatten, we spike, we flatten, we drop back to where we were, we flatten, and then we potentially rally back up, right? So I have to stick with my analysis here because, of course, again, as I laid out, I think all of this is nonsense and it's coming out of left field. All of a sudden, the stock that was raging, doing well, got a lot of attention, got listed and upgraded onto the S&P, is now all of a sudden a piece of crap that's doing something shady behind the scenes and has to be investigated. So, usually also it doesn't happen immediately, just months after kind of all this good news hits. Right? You would think something like this would happen maybe like a year from now, like after the company's been on the S&P, right? Perhaps they took advantage of some accounting issues to make it seem like they're better than they really are, so they got listed on the S&P, right? So you'd think that something like this would take place further down the road. But I will say this, in my opinion, I do think this is all nonsense, and unless the company is, I guess, found guilty of any sort of issue behind the scenes, in my opinion, I would be buying like an animal. Of course, remember though, if we turn around 2 months from now and all of a sudden they were doing something wrong and the stock tanks back to like $100 a share, you have to keep in mind as well, something like that is completely out of my control. I'm not on the board. I don't have a say. I can't right the wrongs, if any, that the company's doing behind the scenes. But it's just laughable, man. It really is, because we talk about the surging AI demand. We talk about the potential monopolies that some of these larger tech companies have. People have approached companies like Google. They've spoken to companies like Amazon talking about potential monopolistic companies being set up here. And it's funny how no one writes a report about those companies. The DOJ doesn't probe those stocks. NVIDIA. I mean, I understand people love NVIDIA, and it's basically the main reason why markets are being held up. And I understand revenue has been climbing. There's big demand for their new chips for the AI. Everybody wants them. So they're consistently getting orders. So right now, everyone's looking at that stock trying to own a piece. But we've crunched the numbers before, right? And that market cap now on NVIDIA is what, like several $1 trillion? The company's not worth trillions of dollars. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. But notice, right, when the stock went on a massive run after a stock split, when they didn't really release any news, and then the stock ran to over 1,000 again, so they had to enact another stock split just because, right? I mean, none of that gets investigated. You had the CEO of NVIDIA come out and say people who joined the company 7, 8, 10 years ago don't want to show up to work anymore because their stock options are now worth millions of dollars. So now the average employee at NVIDIA who has the stock option is now worth millions of dollars and doesn't even want to show up to work because NVIDIA has literally rallied thousands upon thousands of percentage points just inside of the last year or two. But that stock doesn't get investigated, right? What buying behind the scenes is really causing this stock to being pumped up? That doesn't get probed. That doesn't get investigated. SMCI, the smaller fish in the pond, who's now, I guess you could say kind of getting a taste for protein, if you will, starting to bulk up, running up in value. They're getting that demand. They're picking up the crumbs around the, the wayside, and they're growing their company like an animal. That company gets investigated. Make it make sense. And also, because we're essentially a company of loopholes and bullshit, I can't even jump on board with this Hindenburg report and take them seriously. Because what we're learning here slowly is that a lot of stuff that people thought years ago that may have been viewed as an extreme idea that doesn't seem realistic, if you notice, they're slowly starting to come true and come to fruition. So that's why, hearing that Hindenburg report, I have to obviously be skeptical. And I have to say, well, chances are probably they came out with the report so that they can, see the reaction in the stock price and have it drop, 50, 70% from the highs. And then for all we know, their friends behind the scene are scooping up shares this whole time that this company is dealing with this BS investigation. I wouldn't put it past them. I would not put it past them. And again, we can speculate all we want, but a company isn't guilty until they're guilty. Think about how many times they subpoenaed Mark Zuckerberg. And people are very adamant, and they're convinced that Facebook is doing something shady behind the scenes, and they were selling off people's data, and they were potentially interfering with elections, and they were censoring posts and all this stuff, right? All of these other big tech companies dealt or are dealing with a lot of big issues. But it turns out it's never an issue, it's never a big deal, everything's fine. But for some reason, the DOJ is going after SMCI. So again, in my opinion, right now in the moment, I don't care if I was hypothetically to step in here at $4.20 and the stock drops down to $200 a share, unless the company is found guilty of wrongdoing, I would personally be buying every single share of this stock that I can hold. I would be selling widgets that are sitting on my computer desk. I would be selling old electronics. I would be selling clothes I don't need to build up a couple of $100 to afford another share of SMCI. In my opinion, that is how I'm personally looking at this situation, because the company was an absolute beast. And I also went over the 5-year consolidation that I watched in the past, the consistent growing revenue that this company has been bringing in year over year, now for over a decade since I personally was watching the stock. Again, right here, 2015, where are we? 2015, basically throughout almost to 2019, the stock was in this downward consolidation channel and then finally started to run and rally here and obviously exploded to over $1,200 a share. In the numbers, this is a joke, and this stock is worth significantly more. And remember also, this is coming ahead of their stock split, which is due out just, in a few days, really, next week. Looking for a 10-for-1 stock split. Now, when this was announced, I believe the stock was still up at like $800-900 or something, and was just selling off near the highs, 700, whatever. So now, if the company's down here at $350, $400 a share, I mean, technically, that's good news for any of you smaller investors who either missed the train or couldn't afford $400, $700 a share. So this technically is good news for you guys, because if the stock is sitting here at $380, then when they enact the split, it's only going to be $38 a share. So, in my opinion, again, I said it, whether it was 1,000, whether it was 700, whether it's down here at 300. In my opinion, I would be a buyer of SMCI, and you kind of already saw what can happen when we unleash the beast, and we took the stock up to over 1,200. So even getting in here, even if it takes several months for the dust to settle, and all of this nonsense, and all of this nonsense to kind of clear away, then you still potentially stand to make roughly 200% at least from this current $400 level. In my opinion, I'm still bullish on it. And again, unless we find out, unless they release the report and they say, yes, we have proof of them cooking the books, fudging the numbers, guilty, right? Until that happens, it hasn't happened. And this is all just nonsense. And again, they talk about how Google is a monopoly. We have to subpoena them and we have to force them to break up their company because they're a monopoly. But that doesn't get investigated. But some schmuck out of left field who wants to write a short seller report, probably so that his buddy across town could take a discounted position in the frickin' stock. That gets attention, that gets publicized, that warrants an investigation from the DOJ. Absolutely frickin' laughable. But yeah, we had a big drop here where we're channeling upward. Looks like it stopped right here at the fib. Honestly, I don't know, because we can't even read it really off the technicals now, because who knows what other nonsense piece of news is going to potentially come out on the stock. But I mean, I guess technically we're still below the 20-day, and it looks like it technically rejected off the fib. So potentially down here, 367.82 maybe could be the next stop. Again, the stock was here at about 350, I think, when we originally took a look. Then they popped up basically like increasing future guidance, saying that demand was, extreme, and they were looking for much more revenue and growth over the next couple of years than previously expected. So the stock started raging. Then it was announced they got listed on the S&P. Now all of a sudden it's a piece of crap, the numbers aren't real, we have to investigate, right? So, in my opinion, it really is just laughable. But, again, all the way back here from this initial gap up, I mean, I guess you can say you technically have a gap to fill. And this is what, like $173? I mean, I don't, for all we know now with this nonsense, I mean, the stock could just channel down, honestly, for several months. I'm really not sure what to make of it. If you're asking me overall how I feel about the company, I already stated that. I believe I even tweeted out, $2,000, $2,400 a share, in my opinion. That's what I'm looking for. So just remember, if this probe passes and this company proves that there was no wrongdoing, then yes, in my opinion, over $2,000 a share. How low is it going to go? I have no idea. If you're trying to time an option, in my opinion, during this environment, you're absolutely insane. That is the very last thing I would try to do, in my opinion. But if there is no wrongdoing, then you stand to make several hundred percentage points off of this situation. I also saw a report, somebody was saying they think fair value is $600. Don't make me laugh. We looked at the numbers before. Don't make me laugh. Dropped more than 10% Thursday following a report that the DOJ is investing the company for potential accounting violations. Stock once a high flyer during the AI market surge has now plunged 60% from its peak. In my opinion, it's on sale. No wrongdoing has taken place until wrongdoing has been proven. It bounced where it needed to bounce, Dick said. You got to 382. You did undercut it at 373, but you quickly got back above that. I think it's an overshoot, to be honest. There's a lot of things we don't know, a lot of headline risk, but I think 373 from yesterday is safe. Well, that's an interesting way to word it, but as we just laid out, that doesn't mean anything. The stock can channel down for the next 2 months while they're doing this probe, right? And the stock could drop to 173, as we just laid out, with that potential gap fill. Called the situation convoluted, pointing to the uncertainty regarding the accounting situation. DOJ's probe come after Hindenburg Research short report on the company, which also alleged accounting malpractice. Market's tendency to overreact to news headlines has already declined following the release of the short report in late August. Yep, okay, we're reading. We're reading. A DOJ probe is a serious matter, as it is often, as it is often a criminal probe. Just remember, again, it's been over 20 years since September 11th took place, and we still don't know who moved roughly $600 or $800 million in and out of Boeing and American Airline puts as the planes hit the towers. But SMCI, boom, immediately gets probed, immediately gets investigated, following some random BS report while everyone else was bullish on it. Uh, ba, ba, ba. The Aurora report call was that SMCI was worth only 442 to 486 in the best case. That guy needs medication. The stock peaked at 12.29. As of writing in the pre-market, SMCI trading at 400. Uh-huh. Right now, the Momo crowd sitting on massive losses. Momo crowd was not able to distinguish between NVIDIA and SMCI. The prevailing belief among the Momo crowd was that NVIDIA and SMCI were the same. Who said that? Who said that? U.S. economy, 70% consumer based. Talking about Japan tumbling into the split. August 6th, we got authorized 10-for-1 stock split. They break down what a stock split is. Short seller Hindenburg alleged it, quote, found glaring accounting red flags, evidence of undisclosed related party transactions, sanctions, and export control failures, and customer issues. Evidence of undisclosed related party transactions. You mean like when someone like Nancy Pelosi trades on inside information and buys calls on NVIDIA or Intel and then passes the CHIPS Act? Or how about during the lockdowns when they were scrambling to put out vaccines and masks for everybody? So Nancy Pelosi's husband randomly buys calls on Kodak stock that everyone was convinced was going out of business because no one really uses Kodak anymore except hardcore photographers. Stock was down at $2 a share. Her husband randomly buys calls. Then the next day we find out that Kodak is being tapped by the government to produce more masks or whatever it was to help combat the quote-unquote pandemic. All of a sudden that stock exploded from $2 to like $40 a share. But you want to talk about inside transactions and shady stuff happening behind the scenes, right? But that was never investigated. Again, I believe that was Nancy Pelosi's husband. Kodak, symbol Kodk. Go look it up. Go look it up. Because apparently the DOJ didn't take a second to look it up and probe and investigate her. SMCI said in a securities filing on September 3rd, Hindenburg report contained false or inaccurate statements. That despite the delayed filing, it didn't expect significant changes in its results for the fourth quarter or fiscal 24. Needham, analyst, initiated coverage with a buy rating of 600. Price target set on September 18th, just a little over a week ago. He said the company should be a direct beneficiary of increasing adoption of generative AI and that he expected higher growth in unit shipments and average selling prices through 2028. This company is setting itself up for steady, stable, consistent growth, increasing demand for the next 3, 4, 5 straight years. And they're launching a probe and the stock's down 66% from the highs. Give me a frickin' break. Then on Thursday, 10 days after this guy's buy call, the Wall Street Journal reported the server maker was being investigated, right? And honestly, listen, now, see, unfortunately, a lot of people will look at this guy's initial analysis and say, oh, that guy has no idea what he's talking about. You know, it just went from 600 down to 400. And unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But the fact that coverage was initiated with a higher price target, I have to give him credit where credit's due. That original person talking about 440 or whatever, I have no idea what that guy's smoking. Supermicro declined to comment. Fantastic. Stock currently trading at 11 times the per share earnings expected for the coming 12 months, compared with the 5-year average of 13 times. But with all the news, people may choose to wait. I really just find this whole situation laughable. Absolutely laughable. More than half of its value is gone. 25 billion in less than 3 months. Remember, we've had companies come out in the public eye and people were screaming for a boycott. And even though some of those stocks took a hit, sometimes it wasn't even as much as 25 billion. In my opinion, I have to say, I really say, I personally feel this is a massive buying opportunity. I really have to go on record saying that. And like I said, if this report happens to show them doing some wrongdoing, obviously I have no way to know that. But until that happens, in my opinion, you are essentially able to buy a $2,000+ stock for $400 a share. But let's look at the numbers real quick because they're just laughable. Market cap right now, $24.5 billion, PE of 20. Again, this is a growing, surging tech company with close ties to NVIDIA that is surging off of AI demand. But it's only trading 20 times earnings. Other stocks we look at are 40, 66 times earnings. This one's only 20. EPS was on the up and up. The profitability expectations seriously chunked up in Q4 there. The company ended up coming in light. Beat 3 of the last 4 quarters. Look at that annual growth. Steady, stable, wins the race. From 3.5 to 5 to 7 billion. For 2024, about 15 billion. And they're looking for potentially even more going into 25 and 26. But now all of a sudden, it's shady. Even just over the last couple of quarters, low 2 billions, up to 3.6, 3.85, 5.3 billion. Next quarter estimates almost 6.5 billion. This company, in my opinion, rocking and rolling. Average analyst price target about $700 a share. This guy down here at $255 hasn't gotten the memo. Highest price target $1,300, in my opinion, massively conservative. We have 21 analysts covering the situation, 8 giving a strong buy, 1 giving a buy, 11 saying to hold, 1 saying a strong sell. I respect it. EPS, as you see, minus last quarter, the company was absolutely rocking and rolling, did have a big miss. Revenue is chunking up so fast that, and again, I have to laugh, right? Because we look at something like SMCI, look at how much these estimates chunked up, and the company came very close and happened to miss quarter after quarter. But what did I always say about, in my opinion, the NVIDIA expectations, right? They know that NVIDIA is getting the most phone calls and has the highest demand for its newest chips because everyone wants to get into the AI sector. So how come the NVIDIA expectations haven't chunked up that much to where the company comes close but actually misses? I went over this in previous videos. Somehow, no matter how they decide to pick NVIDIA EPS and revenue estimates, the company somehow, some way, by 15, 20, 27% happens to come in well above those expectations and just continues to look like a rock star and just help rally our markets to these fake BS nonsense highs. But that's okay. But SMCI gets these chunked up estimates and they happen to come in a little light. So again, I really have to laugh at this whole situation. This whole situation. I just have to laugh. Expecting to get close to 7 and above 7 billion in the next couple of quarters. Revenue in 23 was 7 billion. In 24 hit almost 15 billion. In 25 they were expecting 28 billion. That is almost 100% growth in succession, back to back to back years. 7 to 15 to 28. But it's overvalued and there's an issue taking place here. That's what you expect me to believe. No way. As we say, we know what we know. And over here, in my opinion, I knew that this stock was on its way to 2,000. Now we're launching a BS probe. If they're found guilty, it's out of our control. The stock is absolutely going to take a hit back down here. If it's cleared and it's found that they didn't enact in any wrongdoing, then in my opinion, you are buying a $2,000+ stock for $400 a share. And again, they're expecting $28 billion for 2025. The market cap is $24.5 billion. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. But let's look at stock charts real quick. I'll let you go. Again, this company's getting hit with a lot of random negative headlines, and then it'll randomly, get an upgrade. Like we saw that the Needham analyst initiates coverage at 600, right? So he was technically bullish, and then boom, we had the news hit about the probe. So what we have to unfortunately kind of take this day by day. But I mean, right now, technically, it's below the 50-day moving average. It's like channeling up and could be dropping down. So bottom Bollinger Band here, sub 325 could be potentially the next stop. If we do beat it up, again, I was looking for like 260, 270, but if it does drop down to that level, they may break it and just have it drop right down to this 200-day moving average, maybe about 220. So you have to keep an eye on it, but here, in my opinion, I think it could go all the way down here to this last consolidation level. But I still say, if you're able to take on the short-term volatility for the long-term growth, in my opinion, you stand to make 4, 5, 800% gains over the next 1 to 2 years off of this stock. If, we come out of this probe smelling like a daisy. But MACD has been falling off a cliff. I'm sure it's going to eventually bottom out and start curling back soon. As you see, even throughout the years, the MACD was just relatively flat, just slowly climbing up. Even throughout 2023, it started to get more attention, right? So the MACD really started to rock and roll. We got the news of the S&P, everything absolutely exploded. Then we had the bear cross, and it's been like nothing but negativity since the company got the spotlight on it. So in my opinion, I call BS. But here on the weekly, RSI 38.25, this is why we can continue to sell off and approach that 30 benchmark if they want to keep beating it up. If we look at the daily here, we basically just bounced off the bottom Bollinger Band. We swung top and bottom. We do have some tightening taking place here. MACD potentially heading back to the downside. Should really kind of do like this up and up run, but I'm not in control. RSI sitting here at about 37.5. Significantly undervalued. But again, remember, a lot of people in the market are emotional, right? So if they were keeping an eye on SMCI and then they see now it pulled back to the 400s, if they look at the recent news, they see the words DOJ probe. So now they may not be a buyer here on this dip, which is why I'm saying, again, in my opinion, if everyone is emotional, no one's buying too much, but everyone's trying to short it because of the recent negative news, then we might drop back into the 300s and even potentially the 200s. But you know how I feel about this one in the long term. I cannot continue to restate that. But right now, again, Tuesday, October 1st, we got a 10-for-1 split. And, maybe Monday it can come down. But Tuesday on that split news, I think, in my opinion, that's where the volume comes in. Because even if people think that there might be an issue kind of percolating behind the scenes, a stock that they maybe weren't able to afford now is going to be roughly, $40 a share. So I think a lot of new, younger, fresh money is going to start flowing into the stock. And it might actually give it enough to kind of pop back up here and regain some momentum until we get more news about that probe. But time will only tell. But in my opinion, $2,000+ stock that you are buying on sale bigly right now. And that's pretty much it. I'll end it there. Once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your weekend.